Welcome back to the Sens Spotlight Podcast, brought to you by the Sick Podcast Network. Before we get started, bet the beauties with Betway and scan the QR code on the screen or click on the link in the detail section to create an account and download the app. Must be 19 plus. Please play responsibly. Betway is an official sponsor of your Ottawa Senators. Also, please don't forget to like and subscribe and hit that hype button on YouTube. That just really helps out the show. And what a win for the Senators. 8-4. It was 6-0 at one point. 4 goals in the first period. Brady Tkachuk was a monster. Dylan Cousins was great. Ridley Gregg. Goals from the back end from Sanderson, Shabbat. Obviously, Nick Jensen as well. Just a really good performance against not a very good New York Rangers team, but overall, really great game for the Senators. 2 in a row, and hopefully they can build on that this weekend. But we got it all covered for you guys with Pierre McGuire once again. So hit it.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. Sens Spotlight.
Here's Alfredson, burst of speed, gets a shot away, score! Daniel Alfredson ends the game in overtime and sends the Ottawa Senators to the Stanley Cup Final for the first time in franchise history.
The sickest Ottawa Senators podcast. It's gonna be sick.
And Pierre, what a game. Just what were your initial thoughts? Yeah, you were right. 2 in a row.
I was pumped. Quick start, obviously. Penalty, power play, 1-0, 2-0, 3-0, 4-0. What I liked the most was for about 40 minutes, let's say that, they had the eye of the tiger. Ottawa did. They were smart. They were calculated. They took advantage of opportunities. They did what you have to do to win a game on the road. And they turned the crowd in New York against the team, which is what we talked about after our previous show or during our previous show. Then I didn't like the third period. But it's human nature. It's a back-to-back. I saw Montreal have that happen to them the very same way the day before in Washington after a big win against Vancouver. And it's ironic because Ottawa beats Vancouver 2-1. Then they go to New York. They get a lead, substantial lead, more than what Montreal had. And then they let their guard down in the third, and they started all trying to poach for points. But I was very I thought Levy was good. I think you would agree. Levy was good when he had to be. There's one save he made on JT Miller in the second period. Miller was coming down the slot. It's a heck of a save. And that kind of stabilized things a little bit. Then in the third period, not his fault. They just started running around and playing silly hockey. But for 40 minutes, I thought they were really good, and I love the fact that the Ranger fans turned right on their team pretty quick, and that's because of the Senators and how well they played.
Yeah, the Rangers are frauds. I've been saying this for years, and I feel way better about it. I have not liked that team for a while, and, I mean, let's start with the Senators, but I will say, watching that Rangers team, oh boy, like that team is not good at all.
Well, but like before we go to Ottawa, because you touched on it, you opened the door, and I like the fact that you did that, and that's one of the reasons why I love working with you, because you're not afraid to say stuff. The New York Rangers have been overrating their players for years. They have been. And the media has been complicit. They have been. The media takes whatever the team PR people give them and run with it. And that's how the Rangers been doing business for a long time. Trust me. And I'm baffled by it. At some point, if I'd have been a writer there, I'd have been like, no, I'm not buying that. I've seen the tape. I've seen the player play. He's not that good. They've been overhyping guys forever and ever and ever. And you can go look. The other day there was a person in the media that was trying to run cover for Drury, the general manager there, saying, well, he can't be blamed for this. None of these players are his draft picks. And I'm like, whoa, time out. Time out. He was part of a coup to get Jeff Gorton thrown out of the manager's office, John Davidson to be thrown out of the presidency. He becomes not only the general manager, he takes over both president of hockey operations and GM. So number one. Number two, you don't think that he was involved in the drafting of all those players that came before he became the GM? Of course he was involved. So this is my point. I don't get how this happened. I don't know why it's happened, but it's one of the only markets where the management and the scouts say stuff and they media run with it like it's gospel.
They have not.
It's unbelievable.
Look at their draft picks. I can only think of one player that's really been a pretty good player, and they traded him, and that was Keandre Miller.
I'll tell you. They had so Ryan McDonough was a great player, but he wasn't drafted.
He wasn't drafted by them.
That's what I'm trying to tell you. So this is where people get confused. Ryan McDonough was a great player, but he wasn't drafted by the Rangers. But if you were to believe it, most people think that he was drafted by the New York Rangers because he had never played for the Montreal Canadiens.
Sure.
I'm just showing you how it works. And it's amazing how they are the masters. They're so good at it. Their PR people are amazing at it. I'm telling you, and this is what gets you into trouble. Like Noah Lobb is a good player. I'm telling you the facts. Noah Lobb is a good player. He's a young player, originally committed to Colgate University, rescinds his commitment. He goes to Colorado College. He has an amazing short career at Colorado College. He goes to the Rangers and he makes the team out of camp this year. And he's a really good player. But he's a young player. He's not a 50-goal scorer. I was reading the press accounts of his performances before the regular season started. I'm like, this guy might be the next Mike Bossy. I couldn't believe it.
I like maybe getting it back to the Sens. I completely agree with everything you said, but I just always think of Lafreniere versus Sens, right? Like that's the same draft class, and I don't. I would have picked Lafreniere at the time. Like I thought he was the one, but last night like Jake Sanderson was like unreal, and that goal. Like people like he obviously scored the 5-0 goal and just a rocket of a shot. Good for my fantasy team as well. Really carrying the weight this week. But what I found amazing was that fourth goal. I'm sure you saw it too. There's 20 seconds left. He looks up at the clock and says, "Oh, I actually have more time." He clearly thought there was like 5 seconds left. He skates through the neutral zone, creates his own space, and leads to that great goal by Cousins with however less than 10 seconds left.
I was going to say like 9 seconds to go, 8 seconds to go, something. Yeah.
It would all start from Jake Sanderson. He could have gone behind his net, done nothing, but he's like, you know what? I trust myself. I know I'm talented enough to, screw it. I'm going to try to make something happen with 20 seconds left. And, that felt like, I think, the Sens were probably going to win it either way, but that 4-0 goal really cemented the game.
That was a dagger. That was definitely a dagger. It's funny you talked about Timmy in the 2020 draft. Byfield goes 2 and obviously Lafreniere goes 1. I was talking to a scout that year who's very reputable. He's won Stanley Cups. He's really good at his job. And he said, "Pierre, you and I have been at this a long time." I said, "Yeah, we have been." And he goes, "I'm going to venture that no organization in history has ever spent more money," and he was talking about the whole league, "to go watch one player play than what people spent to go watch Timmy Stützle in Germany that year." He said the costs for all the teams in the league must have been the most. He goes, because when you were doing it, like Yager, for instance, or even before that, Holik the year before, Reichel the year before, Bure, nobody was really sending people over there. They were trusting what their European scouts were saying, and maybe somebody or two people would go do a crossover and watch. But you didn't have mass influx of people from NHL hierarchies going over to Europe to evaluate. And so this guy, and I really believed them, and I thought because Timmy's playing so well, they were all right. They were all right to go over to Europe. They were smart. That's how good Timmy was then. And now you see Timmy's really – you can make the argument that Timmy and Jake should have gone 1-2 or 2-1, depending on how you see it.
The funniest thing, I think the question is less about if they go 1-2, but who goes first.
Well, this is a Doughty Stamkos thing.
Yeah.
So I remember the draft working with Bob McKenzie and Gordon Miller when that draft was going on. And I remember saying either team, whomever, whether it's Tampa or LA, they can't go wrong. They're picking guys that are going to help them win cups. So Stamkos goes to the final 4 times. He wins 2 cups. Doughty goes to the final 2 times. He wins 2 cups.
Yeah.
Difference is Doughty's got 2 Olympic golds, 2010, 2014. Stamkos never made those teams.
Yeah.
That's the separate. But one guy went 2, Doughty. The other guy went 1, Stamkos. And that's what. So you couldn't. So you're right on. Just one more thing on Jake and Timmy. What I find really interesting. Both of them are amazingly competitive people, and both of them put in work like you can't. They're workout maniacs. Both of them. Trust me, I've been in the gym with them. They're crazy maniacs, in a good way. I say that in a complimentary. So I'm so proud and happy for both of them. I love them both very much. And then the final one. This is the last one, and then you get into the question and answers. I think I could be wrong, but I think if people would have evaluated Jake properly and done more fact finding about him as a person, I don't think he would have slipped as far as he did. And I don't think the interview process when he went through it was as good, as thorough, because you were dealing with a lot of different stuff at that time, COVID being one of those things. And it's interesting because I talked to an NHL team that draft year, and they said there were only 2 players that had aced their psychological profile exams, and one of them was Jake Sanderson.
I'm not surprised. Being around, like I think on the Sens, I probably know Jake the best, I would say, of the players. Like we have a very good relationship. We both love tennis, so we talk about Alcaraz, Sinner here and there. But he, I remember earlier this year when they had that one long road trip, and I said, what did you have some fun? Because they went to California. He's like, work trip, and winked at me. Right. And
Wells.
Yeah. No, but this guy is meticulous to like to the second in terms of like he has compression pants, he has all the gadgets. He, Brady Tkachuk has called him boring in like an affectionate way because he's so like hockey mad. Yeah. And then with Tim Stützle, I think for him, I'm not like, I know he got a personal chef the past couple of years. He told me, like, even I was talking to him a couple of days ago, and he said that's really changed how he feels day to day. Like he just eats really well. He says he eats clean, which I love. I love that kind of way to describe it. But if you watch him in practice, you watch him in the games, he's as competitive as they get. And both of those guys, they're very different personalities, right? I think Timmy really wears his heart on his sleeve. Sanderson almost has to get his heart out almost to express himself at times. But they got the 2 best players in that draft, 2 superstars, and those guys are like, it's been a tough season, and we'll maybe get into like, can they recover, their season at this point? But what makes me still relatively high is I think those 2 guys can be top 5 in their position at their peak, and their draft, and they've been, and like Sanderson arguably is in that spot. I think as a complete defenseman, I would argue he's in the top 5, but points wise, he's not there yet. Timmy, I still think is kind of burgeoning on that, but the way he's playing, you can see it. Like even now, I think he's like a bit too like hesitant to shoot or to make plays. He holds onto the puck a second too much, but it's not because he doesn't create enough every night, right? And like even on that power play, he doesn't get an assist, but he kind of waits it out, finds the right seam, and it kind of lets everything happen where Batherson eventually tucks it home. And anyways, those guys I just love watching. Just a treat to watch. And they're signed for a long time in Ottawa, so we don't have to worry about not watching them for a long time.
I agree.
I guess just with the win itself, like, we were talking about how these 2 games were almost must win.
Well, there were 4 games. So you had Rangers, you had Montreal, Detroit, and Columbus. Those were like Vancouver. You knew they were going to win. You did. You knew they were going to win. But they had to win that. But then it was those next 4 games, and it's because they're all Eastern Conference, and Montreal and Detroit are conference game or division games. So those were they had to get. So now they've accomplished what they needed to do in their first 2. And if they take care of business on Saturday and then Sunday, that's a back-to-back, Montreal and Detroit, they're back to where they need to be. But it's a lot like Toronto. Toronto had to go take care of business, and that Toronto's taking care of business. And if the playoffs started today, they'd be in. And think about where they were, but what they had to do to reel it in. They had to do a lot. And 34 had to get mad, and he did. Nylander had to get off the injury list and get mad, and he has. They needed to create an identity line. They did that with Lawton, with McMahon, and with Lorentz. They got an identity line. and they needed to get goaltending. So think about in Ottawa's case. They had a guy playing mad, Stützle. They had another guy that was starting to get heated up, 7, Tkachuk. They needed to find, a goaltending performance that was going to be consistent. I think Levy's starting to do that now. So that's positive. And then you need some identity. And I think they got Lars Eller coming back, helps them establish a little of that. And I think Ridley's been playing under the radar really well. I don't know how much love he's getting in the market in Ottawa, but he's been playing well.
He's playing really well. And it's interesting. Like, he hasn't been playing in the top 6 much this year. He's typically the odd man out, but the last week he went on the first line a couple games ago. He was on the second line, and I think that really proportioned out their lines a little bit, right? I liked him on that line with Cousins or with Dylan Cousins and Brady Tkachuk. I felt that line was really imposing and kind of was imposing their will on opponents, and I think him kind of just finding his offensive touch is really needed because they're kind of missing, as we've talked about all year, that sixth winger in the top 6, right? And what I really like about putting him on that line is then you let Pinto, Amadio, Giroux, that is a bona fide, that's your identity line. Let them cook. I think Timmy can pull his weight, especially with Batherson and Zetterlund. I don't love that line defensively, but I think offensively they'll hold on to pucks enough, and I think they'll be still a really effective line. So I said it to begin the year. If Dylan Cousins can have a good year and essentially his line have a good season, I think the Senators are in a good spot. I think at 5-on-5, he's wavered. We've talked about that. But I think him and Tkachuk and maybe it's Ridley Gregg can really maybe turn his game up. And I think if they get offense from Cousins at 5-on-5, I think that really is a snowball effect for the rest of the team.
Well said. I agree. I really agree.
Yeah. What do you think about just Tkachuk last night? Because it felt like he was a man amongst boys, and he kind of regained that confidence, getting his 200th goal of his career too.
Hey, I saw that. He loves playing in New York. It takes me back to, was it Saturday night last year? He went in there and just wreaked havoc on those guys. Like, he was just a wrecking machine. I don't know. There must be something in the water in New York. He likes it, but maybe because he's a BU guy and he saw Joe Sacco, David Quinn, and Mike Sullivan on the bench, and he knew Drury was a GM up top, BU guys. He wanted to prove him wrong. I don't know, but Brady seems to thrive in New York for whatever reason. And I thought he was good. I felt bad for Lab. I don't think Laba meant to hit him with the stick in the face.
No.
He didn't mean to do that. And he's not, like, you know how they say, oh, he's not that kind of player. That kid's not. I've been watching that kid for a while. He's not that kind. He didn't mean it. It's a mistake. I like the response, though, from Ottawa, like the response. There's a lot to like about Ottawa last night. There really was. I mean, they were physical when they had to be. They were hard on it when they had to be. They were skillful when they needed to be. They took advantage of opportunity. I just didn't like the last 20 minutes of the game, but that's normal. It's just normal, It is.
Do you worry about that? Like, I know some fans are like, "Oh my God!" Like, they kind of. For me, I'm not that worried because it's 6-0, and the Rangers put up a fight, and I think if the game was a bit closer, if they were up 3-0 and kind of let it slip, that would worry me a little bit more.
That's why I brought up the save that Levy made against JT Miller in the second period. Miller's coming down the slot, and he can shoot it. Like, he can really rip it. And Levy was he had reacted well. He came off the right post, pushed off, and got to the top of the crease, and there was no rebound. And that's a hard save to make against that player. And he made it. And he made it look actually pretty easy, even though I don't think it was that easy a save opportunity. I thought that was a big moment in the game, even though Ottawa had a lead pretty substantially. If that goes in New York, you never know. But it doesn't go in, and the rest is history for them.
Yeah, and some fans were worried, or kind of upset about the, I think he had an 818 save percentage with all the goals in the third period, but all of them were breakaways or shots in the slot. I don't read too much into it. I thought
Gabe Perreault's coming down unmolested, and I know fans don't really know who Gabe is right now.
He's a good player.
I watched him play with James Higgins and Ryan Leonard last year, and with Ryan Leonard and Will Smith the year before. Will Smith playing in San Jose, Higgins a first-round pick of Boston, Leonard a top 6 forward for Washington, and now Perreault. I watched him play the last 2 years. My kid played against that line all the time Trust me. So I kind of know how good he is. And I'm just telling you, like, he's a really good player. I can't believe it's taken the Rangers this long to actually bring him up from Hartford. But he's really talented. And so he's going to do that to a lot of goalies in the league, especially when he's unmolested. Like, that's the kind of player. He's a really talented kid.
He's like he was here for the World Juniors in Ottawa, and didn't like watching him mostly because his Team USA and his dad was Canadian, and I always have a little bit of a slight against guys that are like that. But
his dad was a heck of a face-off guy. I'll tell you that. Boy, Yannick was a heck of a face-off guy.
Was he? Yeah, but I think with Levy, the one thing I really liked was there was a couple times where he made a save, batted it and out. Like, he looked confident. You could feel how much that had come. He's kind of built into that confidence. And just watching him in practice, and maybe this is me with my random eye test, but when he's played a good stretch of games, I can see in the net he's better in practice. He's more square. He's more confident. When he started to struggle, more pucks were going in by him in practice. And I wonder, kind of like the team itself, I wonder how much these two games can really just, okay, we kind of get our mojo back. If they can win those two games this weekend, I'm not saying they're making the playoffs, but I think that is a game changer where you just feel like, okay, we just bested our foes, right? Now they can lose both, and then
if they win. That's why I said the next 4 games. We talked about it before the Vancouver series, before the Vancouver game. He said the next 4 matter. They matter a lot because you can't lose to Vancouver and think you're a playoff team, especially on home ice, and that's their second game in a back-to-back. So they took care of business. Then you're tired going into New York, and I heard they didn't get in until pretty late. I don't know why, but they did. Well, they took care of business last night. They started on time, and they won the game handily. Now they got a day off, a couple of days off, actually. Montreal plays tonight in Buffalo. That's going to be a tong war. Like, they're going to get after one another, Buffalo, Montreal. And you know what Buffalo is going to do in Buffalo? They're going to try to pulverize Montreal physically. So that's a good thing. So you take care of Montreal and Detroit. You took care of the 4 games you had to take care of.
And then you play Columbus, and sure, they just got bones, but they're not a great team. Like,
but that's what I'm saying. Like, they took that's 8 points. If you
then Nashville too, like there's a runway if you can. I feel I don't want to be a broken record, but we've been talking.
You're not a broken record. It's a fact. You're just stating the fact.
But there is, their schedule after that game in Nashville gets hard again. Like, they play Vegas, they play Colorado, Carolina. Like, it does get hard.
There's a back-to-backer. I think it's Carolina, Vegas.
Yeah,
is that right? I think it is.
Yeah, that's not easy. Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. That scares me a little bit. Although neither team of Carolina.
Vegas is playing better now. Vegas was good in LA last night. They're playing better. Carolina is not playing well right now. So I don't know if they're just tired. I don't know, but they're not playing great right now.
No, they're not. But the going back to the team, like, I think the other thing that I've really liked is Drake Batherson's season.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's really like he's almost a point per game this year. I think skill-wise, I really like him with Timmy. They might have a couple, mishaps in their own end. And Drake Batherson is like the forward version of this team of Thomas Chabot, where there's like 90% you really like, but there's always a little mishap that, you're like, oh my God, why did Thomas or Drake do that? And both very easygoing guys, which I always find interesting with.
I just love both guys' character. They're such good people. The biggest foible Drake had this year was the backhand pass in the neutral zone in Montreal, and OT that ends up being an OT winner for Montreal. But outside of that, like, that's a lot of hockey games where you can't say, boy, oh boy, he wasn't really good in that. No. He's been really good. I love your point that he's almost a point a game player because it's spot on. Yeah.
And he hasn't been playing with Stützle like the whole – like, they had a run in – I think it was in November without Tkachuk where they were really driving the offense for the Senators. But it's not like he's been playing outside of the power play, of course. He's been playing with Cousins, and they've been all right. But I just really like what Drake brings, where I think he's so cerebral and so skilled in the offensive end. He has the hands. He has a pretty good shot too. He's not a high-end goal scorer, but he could get you 25 goals a year. Just really good player. Like,
let's say he gets 25 and 30. That's good, man.
And 75 points. I take that all day, every day. Right.
Let's just say that's big. That's really good.
I know. And he's only making $5 million.
That was a good signing.
It was Were you part of it, Pierre? all the 2021.
There are a lot of good signings. Peter McTavish deserves a lot of credit. The former GM there deserves some credit. So there were some good signings that happened in that time. There were.
I always find if you believe in the player, sign them long term, and just like believe in that player.
So such a good statement by you, and this is and you can go track it. I don't mean you, I mean the fans. If they don't believe you, I'll try to back you up on this. I remember when PK Subban signed a bridge contract in Montreal. Mm-hmm. And for 25 years, I've been doing Montreal radio at 5 o'clock or 5:30 every day, and with the great legendary Mitch Melnick. And I remember people were, oh, yeah, we got PK. And I was like, no, you're screwed. And people were like, what do you mean? I said, you just signed a potential superstar player to a 2-year extension, and he is going to take his pound of flesh at the next contract negotiation, and it's going to cost you tens of millions of dollars. Get him signed now, long term. The pain will be less. It'll look bad on paper, but it'll be a huge payoff down the road. They signed him to a 2-year extension, and then all of a sudden they realized this guy's up for the Norris Trophy. It cost them, it's just what I had told Mitch, tens of millions of dollars. And I remember sitting in these meetings at the time in Ottawa when I was there trying to explain, we're not bridging that guy. You can't bridge that guy because it's going to cost you so much money. Just take him, do 6 to 8 years, whatever you choose, but more than 4, less than 10. More than 4, less than 10, because you can do that then.
Yeah.
Well, we got some pretty good deals done.
Great deals. I think the Drake even him and Brady, those are the two ones. Like Brady's outplayed his contract. You know, he hasn't had a great year. He's still worth every penny.
McTavish deserves a lot of credit on that one. But I think everybody involved in that, both Newport Sports and also Ottawa, deserve a lot of credit. There's a lot. That was a long negotiation. That was a long, hard slog.
Yeah.
It was.
And the one miss was Colin White, right? And even then, you buy him out under
that was done before I got there. But I will say this in defense of Colin White's contract: he was trending the right way for a while, and then I think he forgot how hard he had to work to be an everyday player in the league. Because it's not like he was coming from a family that had no means. He's a kid from Boston that had gone to prep school, went to Boston College. Like, he was a member of Dedham Country Club. Like, I can go down the line, all these amazing things. So hockey, he loved hockey. Colin's hockey sense was exquisite. Like, brilliant player. But you saw, like, there was a tempo problem for him. And he didn't want to dig and go to that next level. You know, you had to want it. And that was the flaw. He just didn't want to do that.
Yeah, I talked to a scout once, and he said something really interesting. And if I ever ran a team, I would really look at this trade. And he looked at, like, you know, hockey's becoming a more expensive sport, you know, and so in a lot of ways, you know, kids come from really good backgrounds. They don't have maybe that grit. They don't really have to work in the summers. And he was saying to me that a lot of kids that their first adversities in the AHL, maybe even the NHL, that scares you because they've never had adversity in their life. But the kids that, like, have that steely grit kind of really work. But at the same time, like, look at Jake Sanderson, Brady Tkachuk. Like, those guys came from, you know, wealthy families, but they also knew the NHL world. That's the other thing.
I was just going to say, they had one advantage that, and people don't want to talk about this, but it is an advantage. If you're a kid that grows up in a hockey house, you know the commitment, you know the everyday commitment, you know the grind, you understand it. You either choose to embrace it or you choose not to embrace it. You know, there's some kids that have had amazing opportunities whose fathers were great NHL players, but they didn't want to embrace the grind. Yeah. And then you got Jake, who totally embraces the grind. Mm-hmm. You got, you know, Brady, who completely and utterly embraces the grind. So, like, the respect I have for those guys is immense. You know, the other thing that goes in their favor, and this is something people don't want to talk about a lot, the younger ones, they go away to the U.S. national team development program in the States. Yeah. And in Canada, they don't go away to the development program. They go play major junior. And so you're still away from home and you're grinding. You know, Like we sent our son away when he was 13 years old. You know, it's just like I still think about it. I'm like, what the heck were we doing? But he wanted to do it.
Yeah.
You know, he's the one that came to us. And so you think about that and you're like, okay, all right. And I think to your point, it does make them harder. There's definitely mistakes that happen along the way. You have to be a proactive parent to try to correct those mistakes so they don't happen again. Whether it's not doing your schoolwork on time or, you know, doing silly stuff in the dorm or whatever, you know, like drinking a beer when you're underage, or like kids do all the time. You got to straighten them out quick. It's just the way it is.
It's in exact science at the best of times, right? Like you know, and just like how we develop, people go different, you know, life happens. But I do feel like, you know, as a fellow Nepo baby, I feel like I'm allowed to talk about this. You know, sometimes it works. Sometimes you understand the grind. Sometimes you don't.
You know, can I share something about you with our viewers and listeners?
Sure.
What I really admire about working with you is you are not afraid to work a game and then get up, because you know my schedule's pretty crazy, but I love doing this show with you. And you will get up at whatever time I can fit it into my schedule to do this. Most guys say, Pierre, it's not that important. The show's just growing and we'll do it tomorrow. Not Alex. Alex is like, let's do it now. Yeah. So I'm a captive audience because I know how hard you want to grind. You've embraced the grind. So I love that about you.
Yeah, I do think maybe getting back on track with this team, I think everything, these last two games kind of rewards the way they played. I thought the first 40 minutes, you know, we've talked about defensively how they can be better. I thought they were way better. You know, Rangers aren't a good team, but they played the style of hockey they played last year in swaths.
Yeah.
Limit to the outside, very, you know, low event in terms of like in their own end, not taking too many chances in transition, making it very a structured game. And obviously they lost a little bit in the third period. And they all, like, I listened to the post game, like they all were like, yeah, like it's hard to play when you're up 7-1 or whatever. And
they said the right stuff. I'm sure
it's true. And it's true. It's, you know, I'm a bit from a psychology background. That is what happens. It's human nature. You're not going to try to grind the same way when it's game 7 of the Stanley Cup final versus up 6-1 going into the third against the New York Rangers, the worst team in the East. Like it is what it is. I think if it becomes habitual, right? But I'm not going to lose too much sleep. But I just really like the way they played. They played well. I think it's going to be interesting to see how they do this weekend. I think the thing with both Montreal and Detroit is they're lightning fast, quick kind of response teams. Like they can score a goal in a second. So you have to be really mistake free, or as much as you can be. And they need saves. We'll see if Reimer plays. I was surprised he didn't play, but it worked out. Travis Green felt Levy was feeling good about himself. There's rumors that Allmark will be back next week. I'm not sure if I even like that at this point, just from the team. If they start, like, if let's say they win the weekend and then you put Allmark back in and Levy's playing great, or Reimer, both of them are playing great, I kind of was like, just take more time, like waiting to put. Anyways, again, a lot of moving parts.
I think Levy's playing Saturday at home against Montreal. I'd be really surprised if they put Reimer in at home ice, and then maybe he goes against Detroit in the back-to-back. I'd be surprised if Levy played both games this weekend, but I'd be really surprised with 2 days off if they didn't go back with Levy on Saturday and then didn't go with Reimer Sunday.
Shout out to Sports and Stats. Apparently, Maryland's played 9 consecutive games. It's the most ever since, guess who? Mike Condon.
Wow, the Belmont Hill graduate who went to Princeton, Mike Condon.
Because Craig Anderson, of course, people remember that year. I think.
I thought you were going to tell me the Hamburglar. I was like, wow.
No. Well, he must have. He must have been more than. I was talking to a media member, and they said the Rheimburglar run with Reimer back, and I was like, I need to steal this in my story, but then how do I attribute it? Yeah. I don't know, but. Anyways, it might be in my story this weekend. But
you know what's really a cool story about Mike Condon that people need to know, because he's a really good – Mike Condon's an amazing young man. So he he got paid well over the course of his career. It wasn't an overly long career, but he got paid well, and he was appreciative of every paycheck that he got in the league. And for a few years, he was buying all the gloves for the players at Belmont Hill and the goalies. Like, that's
Wow.
substantial. And he did that for a bunch of years. And I remember seeing Mike around a lot in Boston in those days. And he is such a good man. He donated so much. And I don't think players get enough acclaim for that. But as soon as you said his name, that's the first thing I thought of. And I did a lot of games that Mike played in.
Yeah.
But the first thing I thought of when you said his name, I was like, what a good person, what a good social citizen Mike Condon is.
You know, the lore that I've heard, I haven't reported, like I don't know for a fact, but you hear I feel comfortable saying it, is that Brady Tkachuk and the Tkachuks are very good to their staff in Ottawa. Like they
I believe that.
To the equipment guys, to everything. And that's, you know, I recently learned that's kind of how those guys get paid. Like the staff is basically tips or whatever from players. And I've heard Brady Tkachuk is like the best to his staff and the equipment guys, the guys who sharpen your skates, sticks, everything. And it's something that you don't think about, but when you're behind the scenes and you see those guys, you're like, oh, what an interesting but also kind way to use some of your money to the people that you work with every day, right?
That's part of growing up in a hockey house, because you hear it from your dad. Because I can tell you their father, both Matthew and Brady's father, Keith, was really good like that with the staff in Winnipeg or in Arizona or in St. Louis or even in Atlanta. I knew all those equipment guys and training guys really well. And it was like legendary what Keith would do. So I think that's a really good point by you. I'm sure Jake is the same, and I coached his father. I'm sure Ridley's the same. I coached his father. So, you know, again, it's, you know, I was looking at that the other day too. I was like, these are the kids of fathers that I coached in the league. And, you know, you're excited because, you know, Mark Gregg to me was a player that I really liked coaching because he was far from a finished product, but he was really receptive to coaching, and he was a very, very good player. Very different than what Ridley is. Very good player. He could really shoot the puck. And Jake's father, he could fly. Like, he was an elite world-class skater. But what he did so well is he scored off the rush. Probably in the league at that time, Teemu Selanne, like you look around the guys that scored off the rush a lot, there were like 15 of them. I'm going to say Sanderson was in there because he was popping anywhere from 35 to 46 goals a year. You know, I had him in back-to-back 40-plus goal years, and I'd say most of his goals were off the rush in a league that still had the red line for the two-line pass. So pretty amazing.
It's crazy. And, you know, thinking of Jake, there was they had it on the broadcast, a play that he had against Vancouver that I remembered. And he literally picks the puck up and goes all the way around, enters the zone, turns around Vancouver's goal line, comes around, and you're like, he's just it's like, obviously he's not Connor McDavid, but like I can't think of too many players in the league that have that ability, especially as a defenseman.
Well, I'd say you're really small. So you probably have Quinn Hughes, Cale Makar, Lane Hudson. I mean, we're running out of.
But even with those guys, it's different. It's not sheer like speed. Matthew Schaefer's like that.
He's
I was watching TSN
broadcasts,
and if they looked at the highest speed burst, I think it was plus 25.
Excuse me.
Bless you. And the Sens need some blessings right now too. But with him and Schaefer are like tied for number one in the league with like 22 or 25 basically speed burst over, I think it was 25 or 30 kilometers an hour. Forgive me. And so he just that pace is like a one-man exit, and he's become so good. Also on Ridley Gregg, he told me something interesting where I asked him, I'm like, when did you become kind of a pest? Right. And my favorite thing, I sat beside Graham Nichols in the press box, and we always cackle at all the times. It's probably once a game where Ridley Gregg will accidentally on purpose hit a goalie, like fall into a goalie or bump into a guy, and he just like straight face. And I asked him about kind of when did that come from? And he's like, well, I was kind of small as a kid and I wasn't getting a lot of time on whenever, it wasn't in major junior. I think it was before then. And he said, well, I kind of had to differentiate myself. So I just started playing that way. And that's how he became the ultimate pest, leading to a bobblehead too. So
I think I told you the story. I was out in Edmonton and I went to a bunch of his games. He was with Brandon at the time, and I think they had a back-to-back series, Red Deer, Edmonton, something like that. And they had Caden Gooley. The other team had Caden Gooley and Matthew Robertson playing for them, two pretty substantially big defensemen. And every shift, they would go after Ridley. And at the end of it, Ridley would go after them. I'm like, oh, man, like you're half their size. So at the end of the game, I went down there and talked to him. I said, you're going to have an amazing career in the NHL, but we want it to last a little bit longer than 2 or 3 years. So you're going to have to pick your spots. You can't be doing that the whole game.
Oh,
and he looks at you, he's got those eyes, right? Like he stares at you. And you're like, you don't want to break his spirit, but you're like, you're a good player, but you got to pick your spots. And I've always – I think you know the story, but I'll tell it anyway. So for people that don't know, he hit Pierre-Luc Dubois in an exhibition game and went from behind. And it was bad. It was bad. So I wanted to be proactive and to try to save the kid from having a bad reputation in the league because he was just starting out at the time. So I called Mark Chipman, the owner of the Winnipeg Jets, and said, Mark, I need a favor. First of all, I want to apologize on behalf of our organization for the hit on Dubois in an exhibition game. And I feel bad. So does Ridley. Can you get me Pierre-Luc Dubois' number? The only person I'll share it with is with Ridley. And Ridley will tell you, Ridley sat down, I talked to him about it, and he wrote a letter or a quick text, not a quick, but a text to Dubois apologizing, and all was forgiven. And I made sure that the league knew about it so that this guy didn't get tarred and feathered long term, because potentially, trust me, once you're on the list, it's hard to get off the list.
Look at Tim Stützle, right?
I'm telling you, that's part. And nobody, like, it bothered me. It should have been handled, but it wasn't. Once you're on the list, I can tell you, it's virtually impossible to get off the list.
And as you know, referees, great for communication. Yep.
That's all you got to do.
I'm teasing because I've heard horror stories. I don't think they explain anything too much, but I know you know the refs more than me, so maybe I'm just being
I'm a big fan of the refs because during the COVID, I was in the pod with all the officials in Edmonton that were working in that pod, and I'd go to the gym around 6:30 every morning. And I'm telling you right now, that gym was overpopulated with guys that work for the National Hockey League who were referees. It blew me away, their commitment to the game.
Sure.
All of them. It was amazing. This Gordie Dwyer, when you watch him do a game, he wears number 19. Trust me when I tell you, good luck going in the gym with that guy. Like cardiovascular-wise, unbelievably fit. Strength-wise, flexibility-wise, like he's a pro. And
sure.
Chris Rooney's the same. Wes McCauley's the same. All these guys are unbelievable how in shape they are and how committed they are. I will say this. I've known a lot of referees for a long time. After that experience for 2.5 months in Edmonton, being in that hotel and being in that gym every day with those guys, I was like, these guys are total pros. It blew me away, actually. I did not know that side of them. I really did not.
And that was the best year they ever officiated the NHL, was when they were beside you, Pierre. That's what I learned. Because I think they need you you need to do like gym sessions again with them. But I will just say, I don't think we got to it, but like that cross check on from Verhaeghe to Zug.
No.
All the goalie interferences that make absolutely no sense, including Shabbat getting high sticked, and that it's not that I don't think it's an easy job, but just it's like obvious mistake. Like you don't need to be a rocket scientist or hopefully you should be an NHL referee to make those decisions. But anyways, we don't need to.
Verhaeghe one, we never talked about that, and I think Carter Verhaeghe's a really good player. I'd want him on my team, but that was not good.
That's a suspension.
That was not good. That was really bad.
And, I can't get over it. You call it 5 minutes. Like, the call was right, and you overturn it after watching. That is like, you should be relieved of, like, 5 games if you're a ref. And I don't know. Maybe it's the guys upstairs. I don't know. But that was just asinine. I am never going to – I'll get over it because I don't really – outside, like, Zoom seems okay. So, thankfully, I'll get over it that way. I'm not going to sue a team like a former Sens owner after an injury. But what I would say is this team or the refereeing. Just pick a lane. Just be consistent. If you're reviewing it, call it consistently. Yeah. Anyways, but good news, we didn't have to talk about officiating tonight because it didn't really matter, and somehow we got here. So we should probably stop for now. Just maybe before we wrap it up, is there anything else kind of takeaways that you go into the next game?
The Montreal game is going to be important, and it's really important. Everybody talks about Caulfield and Suzuki, and right now Texier is a line you got to stop, and you do. But you got to be aware of Slafkovsky, Kapanen, and Demidoff. They're young kids. They're playing with enthusiasm. They dominate the puck. They can score off the rush. They can score off the cycle. They can score with power. So you got to be really aware of that. And that's why I think matchups are going to matter. Last change is going to matter in this game against Montreal a lot in Ottawa. And Travis, I'm sure Travis is aware of it, but he's going to have to. This is a game where coaching matters. Mm-hmm. Because of the depth of the scoring that Montreal has now that maybe they didn't have in years past. And it's because of Slafkovsky, Deminoff, and Kapanen. So if he's plugged in, talking about the coach, and they get the right matchups, I expect this to be a really tight, hard-fought game, and we'll see who's got the better goalie at the end.
The other thing is that they play man-to-man, and I think that's a flawed system at this where the NHL's going. And I think if you're the Senators, as dumb as it sounds, they have to capitalize on their opportunity. They're going to get chances. They're going to get chances to score against Montreal. Montreal gives up a lot of chances. They also score a lot. They play high kind of flying games. So the Senators, as dumb as it sounds, they need to be very opportunistic, but they will get chances. I'm not worried about that. They will create. And I think that game they played a month and a half ago with Tkachuk, they were dominant for most of that game. And I thought they played pretty well the first time they played the two teams. I think it was in October or whenever.
Montreal.
Yeah, the Senators, they're going to get chances, freaking bury them. They have to have good special teams. Again, the power play looked much, much better, which is a good sign. PK still scares me, but, on to another day. But
move along. You got the win. Move along.
You got to win. Hopefully they can do it in Montreal. That would be pretty sweet. Yeah. So, and some might say sick. So hopefully we will be back after that game with you, Pierre. And thanks again for coming along. And thanks to everyone who watched the show.
Travel safe, Alex. Take care. Thank you, everybody.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Sens Spotlight on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.